Yep. See, here we go.
Takes 3 brains.
I'd like to call the meeting to order. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Uwchlan Township Planning Commission meeting, extra meeting. I again will turn this over to the township manager to read the guidelines for tonight's meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good evening, everyone. I apologize. This may be repetitive for those that were here last night, but just bear with me for a few moments. Before we begin, I'd like to note that tonight's meeting is being live streamed and recorded on the township's YouTube channel. I want to take a few minutes to provide an overview of the work that's taken place over the last 10 months since the Downingtown Area School District entered into an agreement of sale with Rockwell Downingtown, LLC. Shortly after that agreement was approved, Rockwell reached out to township staff to discuss their plans for the property. We first met in mid-December when Rockwell shared both their conditional use industrial plan and an early concept for a residential plan that included approximately 680 homes and 111,000 square foot aquatic center. Township staff provided initial feedback at that meeting regarding wastewater requirements, overall density, the amount and configuration of open space, traffic impacts, and roadway layouts. Since then, there's been an ongoing and productive dialogue between township staff and our consultants and Rockwell's team. That collaboration has led to multiple plan refinements and the drafting of the ordinance language that's before the commission last night and tonight. In February, Rockwell formally submitted its conditional use plan for office, manufacturing, and warehouse buildings, along with associated loading and parking areas, approximately 100 acres of open space, and a proposed natatorium and nature trail. This submission was required under their agreement of sale with the school district. At that time, Rockwell also granted the township an extension to the statutory review deadlines set forth in the municipality's planning code. In June, the Planning Commission hosted a multi-night public meeting series where both the commission and the community had the opportunity to hear presentations on Rockwell's concepts, both industrial and residential, and to provide input. That feedback was conveyed to Rockwell, and you'll see evidence of that community input reflected in the residential plan being reviewed this evening. In addition, township staff have met with neighboring municipalities that would be affected by this development to review the plans and gather their feedback. We appreciated their willingness to engage in that dialogue and to share perspectives on traffic, road connections, and other regional considerations. Their input has been helpful in shaping how this proposal has continued to evolve. One outcome I'm particularly pleased to highlight is that the township and Rockwell have reached a conceptual agreement under which the township would buy down approximately 25 homes and permanently preserve about 38 acres of land through a conservation easement to be held by the French and Pickering Creeks Conservation Trust. This arrangement was made possible by Rockwell's willingness to work collaboratively and by the availability of voter-approved open space tax revenues. Last night was the culmination of that 10-month effort, marking the beginning of the formal process to evaluate the proposed planned residential development ordinance and the accompanying tentative PRD plan. Our intention through this process is to review, refine, and reach a decision on a recommendation for both the draft ordinance and the tentative PRD plan at the same time. The reason we want to consider these concurrently is to ensure the ordinance and plan are aligned, allowing for coordinated development of the overall property. Last night, we heard from Rockwell, their professional consultants, and each of our township consultants discussing potential adjustments, additional studies, and any further information that may be needed for the Planning Commission to develop a recommendation to the Board of Supervisors. Ultimately, all approvals will need to be considered following formal hearings before the Board of Supervisors, with dates to be announced pending the outcome of these Planning Commission meetings. Tonight, we'll finish the review process and then begin our public comment process. I'll review the rules for public comment a bit later, but they'll be the same as those used in June. Finally, I want to remind everyone that written comments can be submitted by email at lsr@uwchlan.com until October 30th. Those comments will be compiled and shared with the Planning Commission, the Board of Supervisors, and Rockwell. Thank you all again for your time and participation in this important discussion. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I'll turn it over to Rockwell, their consultants, and our consultants to conclude the proposed PRD ordinance and tentative PRD plan review.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Stable. Okay, you're on.
Good evening. My name is Andrew Kabasak. I'm with Rockwell Downingtown LLC, the applicant, and I have with me tonight Rick Stratton with Chester Valley Engineer, our engineer of record. I just want to thank the commission for their time last evening. It was a long night, but we really found value in the feedback, and I've already started looking into a lot of that feedback, and we're excited to implement that in our plans and continue to look forward to this evening's meeting. Greg Lingo, the owner of the company, laid out kind of some of the history, so I won't belabor that, but thank you for your time again this evening and look forward to continuing to get the feedback and hear the public comment.
Okay. Thank you. Where did we leave off last night? My memory fails me.
So we pretty much left off with if you guys have any questions based on anything that was discussed last night, or if you thought of any additional questions that you may have for the applicant or for clarification purposes, let's discuss them now prior to the public comment.
Okay. We covered all the review letters?
We did.
Okay.
We didn't discuss any letters we received from other organizations or bodies.
Correct. Was correct. Is that anything we should look at, or is that just in the file?
Well, the letters that we received from Upper Uwchlan and West Pikeland both discuss traffic. And a lot of the intersections that they are concerned with were suggested to be included in the traffic study from our township engineer as well. So that was discussed last night.
Okay.
But we're sure that we captured everything in their letters in the third call.
I said that yesterday.
You did, okay, great.
Yeah.
They agreed to all those traffic intersections amongst all townships.
And then I know the EAC provided comments. And I know that we've got a couple of representatives from the EAC. I'm pretty sure that their comments around water quality are captured through French and Pickering and Derikoff's letter, but maybe they can they're giving nods, so that's covered there.
Okay. Just trying to make sure we cover all our bases and questions before we start asking you too many more questions.
So, Mr. Chairman, I did want to bring up a topic here for both the Planning Commission and the applicant of a concern that Tara and I have spoke about here on the western part of the site here. Grab the pointer. The ordinance, the ordinance right now as drafted requires a minimum setback of 50 feet from the track boundary, except where abutting the Pennsylvania Turnpike or commercially zoned district, where the minimum setback for all buildings and dwellings shall be 35 feet. So a concern here that we discussed and didn't bring up in my review letter or discussion last night was this area abutting the Haywood Drive portion of the site. So this is zoned, currently zoned, same zoning as your tract here now. This is being rezoned for the PRD if approved by the township. This is PIC, and this is a warehouse and commercial use buildings back in this area here. So number one, I don't know if the layout here of this house, of at least this last house here, is going to meet the ordinance requirement of being the 35 feet from a commercially zoned district. But also, too, is this is a business here, and they're required abutting in the current zoning ordinance. They're required 150-foot setback from a residential area. So a concern that I guess we've been talking about here is that this portion of the site here is that these residents are going to move in. There's a business there right now. This is I think the company delivers water.
Crystal Springs.
Crystal Springs, yeah. to stuff, which isn't I don't think a crazy intensive use. There are trucks and stuff like that, but if this gets reused for another property here and there's like cold storage or storage that's coming in and going, that, I mean, these people are going to be upset if this becomes a more intense use here at some point or another. So if they were being built today, they would be required to be 150 feet from the residential. This is the opposite way around. These people are going to move in with the business already there, but I just think it's worth having a dialogue here with the planning commission and the applicant here about those properties and how that would impact those residents. And what I don't obviously want to have happen is those residents all move in there and they're coming to the township and complain about the living next to this, or if this gets reused, they want it to be a different business going into that has a more intense use and more noise and such. It could be a problem. So I'm not suggesting a solution at this point here, but I'm bringing up a concern that that we've talked about here internally and did not discuss last night. So the applicant number one should basically make sure that they're complying with what the draft ordinance is, and then the planning commission should be providing feedback and saying, yeah, we think there should be some more separation there, setback for those residential units to this to that industrial use, and the ability to do some berms and screenings and so on. And we've done it before with our planning commission. Sorry to keep going. Where you have, I mean, we've been at the planning commission meetings where there's been some businesses plans for the site here on Haywood, and you have the residents up on top that talk about the impacts of what they hear and the noise and the backup alarms for trucks and stuff like that. So we
have
know
heard that.
it's a concern.
We heard that in a recent meeting.
Yeah,
We did hear that.
last year we heard that.
Yeah.
How about the bottom four on the opposite side, next to Tractor Supply?
Yeah, so I mean that obviously is this here. I mean, I assume what they're providing here is a 35-foot setback to the is what the ordinance is calling for. It shall be setback 50 feet from track boundary, except where abutting the turnpike or commercial district where the buildings and dwellings shall be set back 35 feet. So again, that needs to be made sure that they comply with that. And then again, I mean, buyers are going to move in and purchase these lots with this businesses here, but it's just a question whether or
I
not
think there
you
was
want to
a
provide them
lighting
properly.
concern too, the light.
I'm sorry, I'm having
lights.
trouble.
It
Is your mic on there? Excellent.
was lights also, was a complaint. I think it was like lighting.
Yeah, I possibly was lights here for that. Possibly for that, yeah. So I don't think it's going to get more lit in here because there's a parking lot and that has lighting in there, but it could change a use that is more vehicles coming and going.
What's the difference between, did you say it's 150-foot setback up top and then down here it's only 35 foot? There's
So,
a different zoning?
the PIC district here requires if a new activities are being built in the PIC district, they're required to provide a 150-foot buffer to a residential property. So that's what happened on these areas here. I believe there's a 150-foot buffer up to that area. I don't have those plans here readily available, but it's 150 feet on the north side to this area. So that's what they're required to provide if this was being developed and there's residential properties adjacent to it. But now where the current PRD ordinance isn't providing that same 150-foot buffer on their side to the proposed.
It's a different zoning requirement down in the bottom down the south corner.
Down in here.
Yeah.
So from a zoning district here, this is, I don't know what that is, Tara. That's PIC. She's thinking it's PIC here also. I can pull that up on my zoning map here, but I don't have that.
I'm just trying to understand why there's a difference in requirement for those two locations.
For what's being proposed.
35 feet versus.
For what's being proposed. That was something the applicant chose to do as part of his plan. I mean, that isn't, I mean, you can ask them what their thought process was on this. But basically it's a 50-foot track boundary everywhere. And with the 35 feet if against the commercial properties, how the ordinance is currently written.
It looks I don't know what I don't know what the scale is, but it looks like you could probably lose a few homes and move this whole site just from everything from the left side of the, just move that whole site slightly over. It can't be that far off, but if those last two homes that are coming around the corner, if those homes were not there, I bet you get close to 150 foot with not a major remod. And those lots are what, 75, 80 feet deep?
Yeah, I don't have that offhand here with the,
Well,
you can ask the applicant, they might.
is it 150 foot to a building or is it 150 foot to like parking lot or anything?
Property line
Property line.
for that's what the PIC zoning district calls
That's a
for.
lot more.
You guys have any comment on this?
So we do, in many parts around the perimeter of the site, have a significant buffer. There are a couple spots that Dan's referring to where it is tighter. And again, as Greg alluded to last night, there are areas where we have a smaller buffer than some of these other significant areas to kind of create that more contiguous center open space. So we do acknowledge that there's a couple of these spots where it's a smaller buffer, but that is something we were looking to incorporate into this amendment in some strategic places, but overall still maintain a pretty significant buffer around other sections. But we're certainly willing to look at those couple areas since this is kind of a new comment here.
But it's not fair for that business to suffer because of what you guys are doing. So, yeah,
So I think that ultimately here, I think it's the applicants agreeing, and I think it's a good suggestion here for them to evaluate what they can accomplish, come back in, and whether that ends up being 150 foot or ends up being less than that shows berming and tree plantings and such that could help mitigate that issue here. I think we just put that burden back on them to look at that, and we appreciate that their opportunity for them to reevaluate that.
And that relates to yesterday when we talked, there were some other areas where we asked for a more evolved site plan in certain locations. That would be a good place for that.
Yeah.
Because it's kind of hard to know what we're looking at without some scale and dimensions. And maybe also the same for that bottom corner where the 35 foot is, just so we can actually really see what the impact is.
Mhm.
all right. Well, you guys will look into those couple things and go from there.
Mr. Chairman, the one other thing that we just want to note, the County Planning Commission provided their review letter of the ordinance and the plan today. We haven't had a chance to get it out to the members of the Planning Commission or the applicant, but we will. Honestly, I think a lot of the comments have already been discussed or addressed in other review letters. But the one thing that kind of jumped out at me was they made a recommendation that that PRD1 applicants should create a manual of written and graphic design guidelines as part of section 511.17 design standards, which would reflect a cohesive overall design, create common and compatible architectural characteristics, increase the overall aesthetic appeal of the PRD1, and help create a sense of place. Then it says this is also specifically consistent with section 511.1 of the proposed amendment, which lists the fostering of a sense of place and community as one of the purposes of the PRD1. So I just offer that out there. I think from our perspective, we think that's a good idea. I think David had a question about engaging something like that. So just throwing that out for consideration.
Okay.
Yeah, we talked about that yesterday, and they said that that's going to be coming in the next phase of plan development.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we expect that to come into, we'd like to see it in the next meeting.
Yeah,
That's a function of that type of community design service,
Right.
which not only looks at the layout of the community overall, which it sounded as though they engaged somebody to start that process before then doing the civil engineering for the grades and everything else. And they said they would then go back and engage with a community design architect again, is my understanding. To advance this design in terms of the overall layouts and everything we talked about yesterday, but also the design
overall.
Yeah.
I mean, is that all correct?
So it is.
Great.
Yep.
Yeah, maybe I mean, if everybody's okay with it, maybe as part of the ordinance, that 51117 design standards, we just put a line in there that applicants need to create a manual of written graphic design guidelines and be approved by the township.
Yeah.
Just to have that as part of the ordinance.
Okay. Everybody's in agreement with that? Plus the other things that are in the county planning commission recommendations we will discuss later once we all get to look at them. Okay. Dan, did you have any other hot topics you wanted to get on?
I don't think so.
Okay, well, maybe they'll jump up as we keep going. Nick, you got a couple things you want?
Sure. Could you just briefly review again I believe there's 2 historic structures or 3?
Two historic.
2. Who's responsible for kind of doing, I guess you guys mentioned yesterday, rehabbing them and then maintaining them moving forward?
So we would be, as part of our kind of the overall development, we would be responsible to rehab at a minimum the exteriors, and then the HOA would be, kind of built into the maintenance, ongoing maintenance of those. We're currently, we had a historic impact study done, which was submitted, but there's still some more work ongoing beyond that to then develop. Okay, what's it going to look like? What's our plan for the restoration on the exteriors? How could we incorporate and work with the Uwchlan Township Historic Commission? Maybe, with all the history we came up with, make some plaques, kind of develop what that actually looks like.
And then the only other question that I had was the natatorium. What happens if Phil Aquatics cannot gather all the funding required to build the building? What happens with this portion of land?
Certainly. Well, it's as I'm sure you know, that's part of our contract agreement. So it would have to be built. So if they, for some reason, weren't able to meet their obligation, ultimately it would fall back on us. We would certainly look for another group that could do that, but we are also a builder developer. So, I mean, we do have the ability to engage professionals to cause that to be built. And if that would be the worst case, but we certainly don't anticipate that, but we have backstops for that.
Okay.
As an auditorium.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. It wouldn't be something different that would be on the approved plan. And that's, again, the natatorium is part of our agreement. So that's something that it would have to stay as.
What phase of the work is that planned to be installed?
So part of our part of the contract with the school is in the 3-phase takedown of the agreement that has to happen by the second takedown. So then those improvements would begin, and so it's not the end of the project.
Okay.
Does your agreement with the school board mean that you have to build an auditorium as extensive as this one?
The agreement doesn't get into sort of the specifications in great detail, but it says that it needs to be an auditorium, a facility that can, service. And so based on the feedback from the last meetings and public feedback, we heard that it was too big. So we scaled it down to the minimum absolute size that it could be a sustainable natatorium.
I have another question for that. Sorry.
Yep.
The improvements to the natatorium site, obviously they have to be coordinated. Are you responsible for the improvements to the site, or are you giving them the site approved but unimproved?
The improvements would be, whether we do them, contract them out, would be part of our obligation. So the improvements would go up to that, building facility.
Outside the building, right?
Exactly. So that, there's sewer and water and all the utilities and the pad is ready, so that then the group would go
So
vertical.
it's just a building that somebody else is going to do.
That's correct.
Trying to understand. Okay. How much of your work do you self-perform?
Most of it's subcontracted out, but we are the you know, owner contractor entity. So on sites we develop, we work with many different
I
professionals.
understand. I'm just
Yeah.
asking if you had a crew.
We
of
don't
any
have
sort.
like in-house.
Nothing.
Correct. Yeah, it's all subcontract.
I have a natatorium question. Just going based off back to the original design, why was that spot selected on the design? Was it on the left side versus the right side? Can you just talk about that concept?
Certainly. When we were looking at it, we were trying to think strategically from we certainly relied on our land planner as well for their input. When you have folks coming in to use that, if we were to put it in the middle of, where the clubhouse is, for example,
Yeah.
want to kind of keep it in its own sort of quadrant. So if you look at a town center, right, I mean, you do have, maybe that's a bad example, but, we kind of wanted to have it in its own pocket, and we thought sort of up by 113 and coming in that was kind of the best spot, because originally this Haywood connection wasn't
Yep.
kind of part of
As
it.
far as like having it on the right side versus the left of Lionville Station Road.
Yeah, and part of that was we definitely envisioned that this parking lot would also serve as like a trailhead, and we saw that open space was going to be where it was. So
Okay.
that's sort of just where we landed with it.
That's a much smaller section of parking though for the trailhead as opposed to the natatorium facility.
Certainly.
And I'm reminded of previous comments that we received from the Milky Way Farms folks who um, seem to have a preference to see a more commercial use up against their border, especially the parts that are.
Line of questioning was, yeah.
Yeah, sorry. But especially the parts that are closest to their sensitive areas that your residents may be the most find the most objectionable. So that's, I think, kind of the segue there is why not put that use closer to the farm, since that's a transient population of people coming in and out of the site and not permanent residents.
Yeah, I mean, there's certainly a lot of ways you can approach this piece of land and laying things out, and that's just sort of where we landed. We were able to accommodate that buffer. We would have still put homes planned north of that if say the natatorium was in that lower east corner. So, um, it would have maybe been adjacent to part of their property, but we still have homes north of that. So, certainly understand and appreciate the feedback and logic there, but it's kind of sort of the direction we ended up going.
Well, why?
It's just sort of naturally how it worked out over the different plan evolutions. And again, we saw that sort of western portion of Lionville Station Road was where the open space kind of seemed to make sense and have this sort of center contiguous. So therefore, how we had our trail laid out, that's just sort of the direction of where things went.
But
I
wouldn't it be,
understand, but I mean, you could have the smaller parking lot off the end of a cul-de-sac or other group of homes in that area to have the trailhead that goes down into the ravine in that area while still having the primary natatorium facility over closer to the farm where the barns are and the animals, right? I mean, I hear you saying, it just kind of worked out that way, but I mean, that's not really a design thought process. You know what I mean?
Certainly, and like I said, there's a number of ways you can lay this property out, and it's evolved with apartments, then houses, then natatorium, and I certainly understand your point.
But you can't really explain any more rationale for why it was laid out this way specifically.
Other than just, I mean, no, again, there's a number of ways we could have laid it out. So I don't really have a.
I would think that as a potential purchaser, if I had a property that overlooked the open space in there, it would be more advantageous than having the natatorium there.
Sure. Yeah, and we actually had a number of homes adjacent to that open space as well, and we've shifted that density out of that area and to the west and to the east to kind of make that more contiguous open space in the middle.
Right. Well, that's kind of where you're telling us you figured it was the best place to put it. And, for them. Have any other questions, comments? I know there was some people, go ahead. Dave.
Yeah, I wanted to circle back, but I didn't realize we were gonna go on to the natatorium there, the historic properties. You mentioned a little bit about the process there, but can you elaborate on your actual development process for engaging professionals and what you kind of see as the future use for those properties?
Yeah, certainly. So we've started with a historic architect that specializes in these types of historic properties to kind of piece together any information and research been done on the properties to date, and then kind of expand on that. So we have a full grasp of, hey, what's the history here? And
Can I
there's,
ask who you've engaged?
oh, sure, it's Gina Dowdy, Douty. She's we've done some work with her before, and she specializes in historic architecture. So we've been leaning on her expertise in pulling together the history of the Leah Phipps house and the John Phillips, I think I have the name right, properties, and kind of piecing together that history. We're looking to assess structurally. They've been boarded up and under ownership of Downingtown School District for a long time, so kind of don't know what we're walking into, but there's definitely historic value there, and there's structures worth saving. So we're going to continue digging into that. We're going to engage a structural engineer. And like I said, at a minimum, we want to preserve the exteriors, especially there's been some additions on like the house on the east side of Lionville Station across from the natatorium, for example, that are just, I mean, they're, you can't restore them, but the main stone structure of the house is in great shape, which is great. So there's a couple of additions that have occurred. So anyway, long-winded way of saying we're looking to preserve those historic parts. In terms of use, we've been talking with Extract and Box. They do a honeybee production, so they're interested in doing sort of a country store type setup there. So we've been talking to them about potentially using the inside, and then they would have to come through for approvals of the use and then handle the renovation of the interior of that structure to fit it out to their use. In terms of the historic house on the Upper West hand side, heading towards Byers, we haven't really nailed down a use for that. We've talked about ideas of how it could be a mail room or perhaps something that's like a welcome center. But we don't really have a use for it. So at a minimum, we'd like to restore the outside, clean it up, and put some historical information on the outside. With this conservation easement, we, as mentioned last night, potentially putting some parking spaces up around there, so that then it ties into the trail, some display boards. We did some recent exploration on that house, and we've uncovered logs. So it looks like it might be dated back to the 1700s. So having those on display, they're not in great shape, but somehow, just again, putting on display sort of that historic charm of Chester County. So.
Yeah, I understand for the first property on the southeast corner, you have one potential use in the honeybee, honey business there. And you don't necessarily yet have a use imagined for the northern property. And I understand, at this phase of the project, totally understand why you wouldn't. That's great. But do you intend to try to find one, or do you intend to just kind of leave that there and protect it so it doesn't collapse and restore the exterior so it looks nicer, but not actually engage it?
Yeah, we're not dead set on having to have a use there. I think if there's a functional, practical use for it, that's great. But the main goal is to preserve it and make sure it stands there for perpetuity and adjacent to this conservancy. I think that would be a great thing. But we're not set on forcing a use.
Yeah, I recommend certainly to try to find one, because the best way to preserve something like this is to, adaptively reuse it and give it a purpose in a home and along those lines. So that might be something to work with your community design architect on, in that marketing and planning process to, get some ideas together and see what else might come up.
Totally agree.
So I'm sorry, real quick, with the historic properties, just so I'm clear on this here, you guys, the developer will be responsible to restore them as part of this project here, and then they're being turned over to the HOA. So is that correct?
Yes,
Okay, so the HOA from if the lower one here is going to end up being rented out for a commercial business, they're going to be in the process to manage that leasing and rental of that here. Is that what
yeah, so, yeah, and I'm sorry, so without a user in either, if there's not a user in one, the HOA would be maintaining it, but if Extract and Box, for example, goes through and does their honey store there, then they would be responsible for that structure.
But are they gonna then, are you gonna, is that gonna be sold to them as, okay,
Yes,
so that would be the case. So it's
yes,
not, so they would sell it and basically there would be restrictions in the covenants here that saying that, hey, this is historic use, this is what you're required to do for it, but that would be actually be sold to them. And it's not going to be the HOA having an HOA board trying to, oh yeah, we got a lease and trying to managing becoming
Correct.
okay.
Correct. Yeah, thank you for clarifying that.
Okay. And then the other one, if all of a sudden someone came knocking on your door and said, "Hey, I want to use this for adaptive reuse," and you would, so how this would be written out would be that you have the ability to sell this, and in the absence of that, it becomes a responsibility of the HOA.
Correct.
Okay.
But I
And then
mean,
the
that
approval,
is-
I'm sorry, the approval process then for this is you'll end up identifying within the ordinance that those uses will go through an approval process for the township and here independent of the PRD, correct? Is that how that's going to be spelled out? I think you had some language in the ordinance, but I forget how that was spelled out. If you could refresh my memory if you recall.
It's the last page.
Yeah. But then there's, yeah, in the event the PRD are used for, but section of the actual 51122 of your ordinance says the historic resource retained in the PRD are permitted to be used for the following: residential use, indoor recreation, community mail center, or other accessory uses typical serving a residential community. In the event they're subject to oh, so then you basically are saying that in the event the PRDs, the historic resources are used, for use is subject to 612(7)D, the 4-acre lot size shall not apply. So I mean, ultimately here, does this not need to spell out that there is potential for commercial uses within this? I don't know if your ordinance is addressing that. So I think you guys need to review that as a for the future items to make sure that those uses are outlined and going to be permitted for what you may or may not use for that, what you're considering. Yeah, and Tara's asking, saying, would it default back to 612 of the current zoning ordinance? And maybe that just ends up spelling out in here that the permitted uses are the following, and then maybe subsection 5, Roman numeral 5, basically saying, or uses as permitted within the section 612 of the ordinance. So I just think we need to have some further discussion to make sure. I just don't want to go through this process and then you having to go get a variance because you didn't think this through here, or have the language done properly. So
Got it.
I'll just note one other thing about potential for commercial use or retail there is that if the arrangement requires the user to purchase the property, that would be very restrictive. I mean, that's definitely not the typical way retail establishments work. They always generally rent their properties so that it, reads very differently for their taxes, as you probably are aware. So that would probably prevent or make it much more difficult to actually find a retail or other commercial use there.
Yeah.
So something to think about and work on.
Thank you.
And back to the same thing, if we're talking commercial use and how much use, then we really got to consider the parking for both houses, even if the mail room and or a clubhouse or something. You know, you can't just have two parking spots. We got to think that out too. Because same thing, we're kind of tight on all that.
And Dennis, I think what would happen with that is they would have to come back through once they determine that use and go through an approval process and to show that they meet the adequate parking for that use, whatever they end up doing.
Right.
So that will be something that I think would be difficult to plan as part of this plan if they don't have a use defined. When they determine that use, that would have to come back through a separate land development approval process. So.
Okay. Yeah, it's just, Steve.
That's all right. No, go ahead.
We'll get there.
I'm not going anywhere.
I'm just worried about it. The way they sit there right now. It looks like there's houses all around it. Same thing. We don't really have a good enough picture to see what kind of space we got to work with there, you know?
Yes, exactly. There's some more detailed, like, plot plan around those two buildings would be really useful too. I had a couple questions. You mentioned that the Upper West building, in some of your early exploration revealed log construction. So, I would say it would be really good for us to have more information on both structures. And if that original structure is actually a log home, then that represents definite, historical asset to the county, which should be not just preserved, like rehab, but like actually restored. So there's a difference between restoration and rehab is, slapping up some kind of cost-effective siding versus like actually spending the money to assess what to what period it should be brought back. You said there's some additions on it. So I guess my next question is, you have a historical architect looking at it and they're working with the historical society?
Yeah, they're going to be working with SHPO, the Historical Society. I've been in touch with Lee Wisdom and them. So this is sort of a new, we're still very actively working on that. So the study is nowhere complete. This is sort of an ongoing thing. So
could we see, like maybe on the next meeting, would be great if we could see where you're at with that, what they're finding, what kind of evidence there is, some kind of dating, like, if they think there's some, that would be really great.
Yeah, for sure. And I think I could even invite Gina to come to the next meeting. She can speak to that better than I can.
Thanks.
And Steve, there is, I don't know in the package how much you guys went through, but there is a 34-page historic resource package for this talking about these properties. So it's a historic resource impact study from September 30th, 2025.
Okay.
So that's in the package, and if you don't have that, Tara can get that to you. So
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
I'd like to wrap this. I'd like to make one overall statement and everybody's free their comments.
Do we have any questions? More questions?
Yeah, I have a couple.
Okay.
Last night, there was some discussion about additional walking trails throughout this facility, and there was some statement about not putting them behind some of the properties because of security reasons and such. And just today, I was in a community that had walking trails all through it, and some of them were within 25, 30 feet of the rear of the properties. And I talked to a property owner there, and I said, how does the community feel about these trails? And his comment was, it's one of the assets that they find of the community. So I think I would like you to take a look at that again. And, we've got an active adult community. Let's give them more activity areas with walking and such. I think the space along the right-hand side, if you could make that a loop around as a walking trail, would be good. The other thing is the idea of the wood chip trails and that center trail. I just think that's a lousy idea, to be honest. I think something more substantial, especially with a senior community using it. And in looking at your plan again last night, the guest parking area seems woefully short. I spend part of my year in a community with this kind of density, and one of the biggest problems we have is guest parking. So I would encourage you to take a strong look at increasing the guest parking. children and grandchildren and stuff come visiting, it's woefully short. That's all I have.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So in the PRD, one ordinance, the first thing under 511-1 says support the land use and growth management goals such as residential development patterns that balance compact development with preservation of open space and environmental features. I guess just looking at the beginning of that line, I presume you guys have some type of, Rockwell has some type of data that says that we're gonna have up to 600 units worth of folks that are gonna be filling all of these houses in this general area.
The demand is certainly there. If that's the question.
The demand
Yeah,
is there.
for sure.
Okay. Because I do know there's obviously a few within like a 20-minute radius of here that, you know, we're slow to begin, but they are starting to fill up a little bit more. So I'm not sure if your data
Yeah, this
included
is
all
a
that.
highly desirable location. We're
Okay.
confident of that.
Also with PRD1, Dan, correct me if I'm potentially out here in left field. Between yesterday and today, there's a lot of O&M, operation and maintenance agreements that should be maybe given to the forthcoming HOA. Should that be included in the ordinance, that the developer is responsible for drafting those documents, so that way the HOA is set up for success versus failure?
So the stormwater ordinance applies, and all the stormwater O&M requirements are already covered in the current ordinances that they need to comply with. So that would be addressed, and I believe there's language in here regarding the necessity for dealing with the open space. So what will happen as part of this project here is they'll do a manual here for how all this open space management will be done. I can look at the ordinance to make sure that language is clear in here, but that's a given, that they would be doing that and spelling out exactly what's being left controlled in meadow, what's being mowed, and all those items, and what invasives and what they need to do to get involved in taking care of invasives. That's going to be as part of the conservation trust throughout the center of the property. That's going to be really well defined through the French and Pickering Creek group here. But the O&M manuals that they'll have to prepare will address the areas outside that conservation trust, so that they're mowing where they need to in the backyards and so on. My understanding from talking with the applicants over the last year or so, that the HOA is managing all their lawns too. So this is going to be a facility here where you have the HOA take care of everything outside the dwelling. And I assume the dwellings alone are taken care of by the property owners, and all the lawns and driveways and plowing are taken care of by the HOA. Is that what your intention?
That's correct.
Okay.
And the sewer,
Mark was just bringing up about the sewer
Right,
here.
that was
The
one of the
sewer
points.
being dedicated to the township,
so
though.
the township will be responsible for the daily checks that is
Yeah,
recommended?
so I think what to be determined, but it's my understanding here that DEP will mandate that becomes a public sewer system and the responsibility of the township. Could there be a possibility that it defaults back to the township and the HOA has to do something here? I'm not the sewer engineer, but I know there was talk about sewer districts and making sure these things are being paid for properly and so on. But we pretty sure that the DEP will probably mandate that the township owns and operates the sewer and the pump stations, the sewer conveyance and the pump stations.
And then there's just the last thing would be the two historic buildings we kind of discussed, like the HOA is responsible for maintaining those, like there should be some type of O&M put in place for that also.
Correct. So I'll put some notes down here that make sure that the ordinance is clear on that, but I'm pretty confident it already addresses
Unless
that.
they're purchased, unless the land is purchased from the,
Correct, and then it runs
Right.
with the property owner for whoever owns and operates that.
And not to get in the weeds, but then what if the property is sold Like, does it sold back to the HOA then? Like, how would that work? Or is it then just,
So it would be, it's an individual property that could be up for sale for anybody.
Okay.
What would happen here for that, but maybe there should be a fallback if the property owner defaults on it. It turns back to, turns back to the HOA's responsibility. If there's a business owner buys it, doesn't succeed, and then basically, they they can't find a buyer for it because it just doesn't have a use, somebody doesn't want to have it. Maybe it should have some language that it defaults back to the HOA, for them if it goes to bankruptcy or whatever, goes to sheriff's sale.
yep, okay, that makes sense. I think that's it for that, Dennis.
Everybody have a chance to look things over?
Hmm.
There's a lot here to take in. You know that.
So,
And there's a lot, and you know, we've have a lot of questions, had a lot of questions to get answered. Anyone on the board have any other questions?
No questions or comments?
All right, I'm gonna let Mr. McLaughlin, he has a couple comments he'd like to make.
All right. So beyond, I mean, it's default, of course, is responding to all the letters that you've received today from all the township consultants. But I'd just like to hit the highlights quickly that you understand what's important to various members on the board as I've talked to them individually and what's important to me as well. One of the items that really is very important is that we need get a scaled plan that shows all the features on each lot. All of the features. That includes the drive, the house, the deck, the walks, the road widths, the driveway lengths, and the parking. Wherever there's parking, we need to understand that. You've heard how much we're concerned about parking, both guest and resident. I don't know where the emergency services management plan is. Is that by them? Is that by us? Who does the ESM?
We had asked for the applicant to provide that for
Okay.
our emergency services, police, fire, ambulance to review.
Okay, so we don't have that yet. The natatorium parking discharge plan and the draft schedule of how many events we could expect there, timing of those events. That's a big deal. You guys at yesterday's meeting stated that you had some metric for determine the clubhouse size and the pool size, and the amount of area you might need for both of those. So we'd like to see that. The open space calculation still needs to be cleaned up. We talked about that yesterday, but I wanted you to know that that's very important. The natatorium height didn't feel like I understood whether we left it anywhere other than that you're at 52, the ordinance is 35, and where we were going from that, especially if you end up without Phil Aquatics, which I'm sure their request was for the 52. But if Phil Aquatics fails, you know, what are we going to do and what's that going to look like? The woodlands ordinance compliance married to the street trees, how we want to coordinate that. We spent a long time discussing that yesterday. There's a lot of information in the Thurkoff letters about that. And last, of course, is traffic, and traffic. All of that is where we're at. And before, we meet again, hopefully we can get a big chunk of this taken care of.
Understood. Yeah, that's our expectation to resubmit a lot of this information to you.
Okay.
The, as far as showing what the front of 609 different houses?
No, that's not what I'm expecting. I'm expecting you to show us maybe one of the phases, but and I don't need elevations. I'm just talking about, so the audience, so our constituents can see what this is going to look like. They understand the density of it.
Okay.
Okay? good or bad.
At
But-
least one of each type. There's 4 different types.
Yeah, but I
Yeah.
mean, you need to see,
Yeah,
you need to see a
correct,
chunk.
I
correct.
think we were saying is related to the traffic. There's a lot of things we're gonna get from that, but related to the traffic implications is we'd like to see a detailed plot plan of each of the types of houses because the face width of the house is gonna determine how much parking you can get in there. We wanna see what it actually looks like. Driveways drawn, sidewalk, the whole thing, just mapped out. I mean, this is a good process for you anyway.
Yeah, I think we have.
Yeah.
It's a typical lot layout, but it's not all the detail you're asking for.
Right.
but I think just some of the.
Yeah, I saw these and they're in the sets. Yeah, they're in the sets. I've seen them before, but. Right.
Just,
Yeah, but I think, take that, pick a quadrant and then go and
Do the
build it
whole
all
thing.
out so you can see the width of the street, the sidewalks,
Yeah,
the
if you got,
back to backyard space, like that whole thing all together.
if you captured,
Yeah.
a sample.
Yeah, yep, exactly. I mean, if you have like five of the same type houses in a detail, completely done up as if it's a site plan, and then move to the next type of house, do it up. It's just, it's just like magnified detail of 3 or 4 typical buildings. And then we can see what that's gonna look like in plan, and we can extrapolate from there.
Okay.
Thanks.
I mean, it's drag and click really for a lot of it, right, Rich? I mean, it's just drag and click.
We'll have to design what you want. That's what we'll do.
Are you using BIM? CAD, just CAD? 13, 14? Okay, that's the new one, okay. All right, well, that's what I had, Dennis.
Okay, thank you, Mr. McLaughlin.
Anybody wants to add to that, please do.
Yep, he voiced an opinion of, some of our members. I'm gonna reiterate on that, the density and the traffic and parking and I call it the swimming pool. I'm sorry, that's what I call it. I'm not, not in love with a couple of those things that are in front of us. With that, any other comments?
Here, do we want to talk about that?
We can. Who would do that? Your traffic man?
I'm not even sure if we talked to Matt about this.
Okay, go ahead.
But I mean, I had thrown this idea out back in June, and I mean, we didn't really go anywhere with it. But I guess just open it up for conversation. I know that there's a lot of concern about Lionville Station and Byers and the ability for traffic to go north there. There's some concerns about the percentage that's allocated in the traffic study of what's going north. But what if we dead-ended Lionville Station, right? So essentially at wherever Haywood Drive is coming into Lionville Station, it becomes one way after that. And so you can't go any further north than Haywood Drive. The properties that are north of Haywood Drive would be able to come down, but no traffic would be able to go further north there except emergency vehicle access. That's a big inconvenience for residents that currently use Lionville Station as a cut through to get north up to Byers and access Township Line and all of the homes and residences up there. They'd have to go around Haywood and up 100 and whatnot. But I guess just throw that out for the Planning Commission to talk about, right? Whether that's something you even want to explore or not.
I would explore it. I don't use it, I would
Yeah.
say. I would love to hear the residents that are here and the public comment on that. I don't use that road enough to say what would work best. And if it is used both in a north-south direction, day in, day out, or if it's just used more in a southerly direction.
I'll reiterate all the same stuff. I don't use it frequently either, and I think we would really want to engage the overall community in the area a lot more extensively than just tonight.
I would like to hear the public as well, but I do use it. And I guess my question is, what is the issue you're trying to resolve? It is because of that really weird dump onto buyers, right? So that definitely is an issue. And I wonder if that would actually, what would really make sense is to kind of turn that into an actual intersection. But if you're, so aside from that, which is real, especially if the volume increases there, and it's going to be a hang up, and it's a dangerous turn and all that. So if that was going to be addressed, I feel like that would have to be addressed if we're going to do this. But if you close that and you just redivert all that extra traffic to Hayward, you're not fixing any. All you're just moving it is a lot of volume now to two locations instead of three. And that is, that Hayward Drive opens up into a residential area. It is another residential area. Unfortunately, it'd be nice if the Hayward Drive could get you right out to like Route 100, but it goes through a residential area that has impact as well. So
Well, you'd go up on a township line.
yeah,
and
you
then
go
you're
up on the
either gonna-
township line, which
You're
is
either going to run out over into Eagle to 100, or if you're somebody who goes up the current Lionville Station Road, you're going to turn right. You're going to head over to try to get to Byers anyway, but you're going to do it through that other neighborhood.
Yeah, but that means you're gonna
Yeah.
put a lot of extra traffic load up on Route 100 in Eagle.
That too.
Because they have to get up, which is already total
Or-
bottleneck anyway. They have
Yeah.
to get back up to where they're going. Whereas right now they can just run straight up and get on Byers.
Or you'll go the other way and take 401
Yeah.
up. So you'll go up 113, get to 401, which, we've gotten correspondence to. There's a lot of concern about backups at that intersection.
Yeah.
So
I think this is something that we should look into. Now,
Yeah.
Rockwell is not planning on doing any improvements to Lionville Station from where your property ends down to Byers Road, are they?
Correct.
Right.
Yeah, just the property that we own, we're gonna
Right.
improve. Yeah.
Okay. That's something else. We can consider that in with what you're considering.
Well, I mean, the only comment I would say there is those intersections were not studied as part of the traffic study. So there's no evaluation as to whether they need to be addressed. And the applicant has agreed to include those intersections. And if the traffic study says that they need to be addressed, I mean,
Yeah,
that's
that-
going to have to be a conversation.
Yeah,
They should definitely be included.
I did not realize that intersection wasn't considered.
Yeah, buyers and Lineville Station, Mac, correct me if I'm wrong.
No, but they're called out,
West
they're
Pipeline
called,
request,
they're called
yeah.
out in your,
Correct.
in the
Right.
professionals' letters to be studied.
That's
And
right.
they agree that they were gonna study.
That's right.
So
Yeah.
that's done.
But then if the study comes back and says, based on the current condition of Lionville Station Road north of the site and the intersection with Byers Road, we have a big problem, then I think Bobby's suggesting we'll need to
Yeah, exactly.
further
I
discussions
understand
about
that.
it.
I
Yeah.
understand. Yes. But you gotta know what you don't know.
But it'd be great to hear from the public while we're here talking about it.
I think that's why it was brought up, huh?
Uh-huh. Nicely done.
Any other comments from the planning commission?
I mean, I'm not going to get into the weeds on this one, but I liked David's comments of, I'm not saying go back to the drawing board, but I would really like to see if you could potentially shift over that natatorium over and put some of the residents in the other side.
Yeah, and I did come in a little late, I apologize. Move the natatorium to the right and put the homes against the turnpike?
Correct, or at least whatever configuration makes sense, yes, but I mean, like it was mentioned, the shifting the natatorium over against the Milky Way farm could help fix the potential forthcoming issue with farming practices.
It will actually be more against the shopping center than it would be Milky Way.
Well, you can
Well, you can position it accordingly.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to sit all the way at the bottom.
Well, that's true. It could be right in the middle of the residential. I don't think anybody wants that. Would you?
I think we were just exploring a
Yeah, I agree with
path,
you.
and
I
one thing that
agree.
we found, because we were trying to ask and understand the rationale and thought process behind the current design, and we didn't really get a lot of insight into what that rationale was. The answer, not to put words in your mouth, was basically like, this is just kind of how it ended up, which wasn't a
And I apologize for
great
that. We
rationale.
worked with Milky Way Farm with a lot of the things we talked about last night with the buffer and the berm, the 300-foot. So we doubled the buffer area there. We thought that the somewhat more commercial type building being next to the turnpike made more sense from a market standpoint. If we're asking, would a person rather live up against the turnpike and then move the natatorium into the middle of a community and have people all living around that? Absolutely, they wouldn't want that. So we're trying to focus on the livability of this. That's why it's off to the side.
Well, if any residents ever complain that the cows are mooing too loud, you can tell them that they could have lived on the turnpike instead.
Well, they'll have that option early on.
They will, yeah, in the corner.
All right.
Sorry, I couldn't help myself.
No, that's all right. Do we want to open public comment? I was thinking take a 5-minute break. Yep, a quick break, and then we'll open it to public comment. Thank you, everyone. and comment that he wanted to add to tonight's meeting.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to clarify something for those here in the room as well as those that are online listening or watching in the future. There were some questions during the break about the open space and the potential buy down that I spoke about earlier in the evening tonight and last night at the beginning. Um, this plan where it shows these 25 homes kind of to the northwest of the roundabout in the center there, right where the historic structure is. Um, those homes there are the 25 homes that we at least have a conceptual agreement with the developer that the township would buy down. So the plan that you're seeing this evening here and online still shows those homes. Those homes, assuming that we're able to get through all of the necessary steps, those homes would disappear from the plan. And then the road that runs here to the south of those homes, um, that road was a topic of discussion last night about shifting its configuration more to the north to provide more unimpeded access for the open space, effectively providing this is the 38 acres or so that would be placed under the conservation easement using the voter approved open space tax revenues. So I just wanted to clear that up, that the plan here still shows those 25 homes that the township has reached conceptual agreement with the buyer, with the applicant about buying down. Those homes would disappear. The historic home, the up here to the north, that would remain. That would get subdivided in probably its own parcel, not included in the open space. And we had also talked last night about shifting like a section of this parking here associated with the natatorium up here more for a trailhead. So just kind of wanted to point out the fact that the 38 acres and the buy down of the homes is not reflected in this plan, largely because we haven't inked the deal yet, right? So I would imagine in future renditions, we'll see those removed and the road reconfigured and everything else. So I just wanted to clear that
Right.
up.
Thank you.
Yep, thank you. We had some questions. So.
Very helpful.
So moving to the public comment process. The rules, as I said, the rules for the public comment process are the same rules that we largely follow for our board meetings, as well as the rules that we used in June at the church. Speakers will need to identify themselves and municipality prior to speaking. Speakers are encouraged to include their street name. Groups, businesses, or organizations are encouraged to designate one person to present on their behalf. Residents and taxpayers of other municipalities are asked to give Uwchlan Township residents and taxpayers an opportunity to provide public comment first. Comments should be directed to Planning Commission members and not to Township staff or Rockwell staff. Responses to public comments will likely not be able to be provided. Comments from the public will be used as considerations in future plan refinements and decisions. As a reminder, public comment is not an opportunity for questions and answers. In lieu of spoken public comment, members of the public are welcome to submit written comments after having attended or watched the presentations via email at lsr@uwchlan.com. That's L as in Lima, S as in Sam, R as in Romeo @uwchlan.com. Between now, October 15th and October 30th. These comments will be provided to Planning Commission members and Rockwell and the board after the October 30th date for their consideration and future refinements and decisions. If you email that address, you'll receive an auto reply acknowledging receipt of your email for each email that is received. Each speaker will be given a total of 3 minutes to give their comment. There's a countdown timer in front of Mr. Martin that will be displayed to help speakers monitor their time. Speakers are asked to adhere to no more than the 3 minutes and provide any additional comments they were unable to say via email at lsr@uwchlan.com. Speakers may not use signs, props, advertisements, or video while providing comments. Speakers should limit repetitive comments and when appropriate, simply acknowledge agreement with a previous speaker's comment or position. While the public has the right to make critical remarks, the public does not have the right to disrupt meetings. In cases of serious disruption, the meeting may be adjourned or other actions taken to resolve the disruption. And as the meeting is subject to recording, a speaker's voice may be recorded and publicly broadcast, and their name and municipality may appear in meeting minutes. The final note that I have is, because we are live streaming it, it is very important that we use the microphone. The microphone is here in the center of the room. We do not have a sign-up sheet this evening, so if you'd like to provide a comment, you're welcome to get up and stand in line or take turns coming to the microphone. But those are kind of the rules. Please just make sure you're speaking into the microphone. I know sometimes people like to look around the room and move around, but making sure that your voice is going into the microphone helps to make sure that those comments are projected to the online live stream.
Thank you. And I will help with trying to have people, if we can't hear them or understand, if you're looking at me or looking at the board, we will let you know if you need to be talking louder or better. With that, we will open it up for public comment.
Good evening. Jim Warhay, 211 Bauman Circle.
Closer to the mic. Closer, closer, closer.
Jim Warhay, 211 Bauman Circle, Uwchlan Township, chairperson of the Uwchlan EAC. First, thanks to all of you on the Planning Commission and the township staff and supervisors for your hard work steering this project. Clearly, it's a complicated undertaking. Very much appreciate all your hard work. And if I could, if it's okay, thanks to Rockwell for working hand in hand with the township and all the concessions for open space and natural areas. The news of the conservation easement was so good to hear last night. That is really good stuff. I just have a couple comments from last night's meeting, based on last night's meeting. The first is in regards to stormwater basins. We strongly discourage the use of mowed, cool season grasses being used in storm basins. Basic turf grass is an ecological wasteland, providing no benefit to native wildlife whatsoever. And as mentioned last night, it will actually attract geese and everything that goes with them, making a bad situation even worse. Instead, a native plant mixture provides a host of benefits. Native plants have long, deep root systems. These roots provide nutrients to the microorganisms in the soil, and those organisms help to degrade hydrocarbons both in the soil and in stormwater runoff. Deep roots increase water infiltration and percolation, improving water quality, reducing erosion, and recharging groundwater. Above ground, native plants create vital habitats for local wildlife and provide food and host plants for pollinators. Once established, a native plant mixture will require less maintenance than turf grass. And last but not least, they provide a palette of colors and textures all summer long, becoming a feature that homeowners and visitors will love. And I can attest to this because Acro Park Basin has been fantastic all summer. We've just thoroughly enjoyed it.
Good.
So,
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Yep, appreciate your comment. You can turn it down, I think. There you go.
Hi, I'm Tony Gorkin. I live at 119 Landavery Drive, and I'm vice chair of the EAC, and I'm also a Pennsylvania master naturalist. I'm thrilled to see the conservation easement and all of the buffers and the other kinds of green space that are incorporated in this plan. It's exciting to see that. I did hear something this evening that just kind of planted a seed in my mind, that the HOA will be responsible for the land around all of these houses. And I'd like to plant the seed of an idea. I have seen numerous examples of senior communities that are landscaping with native plants. I agree with everything and support everything that Jim said about the importance of native plants. but this has actually in some senior communities become a selling point and an amenity to the seniors because it's a different look. It's not just lawn and shrubs. So I'd like to encourage whoever is doing the landscaping work on this to consider. I can provide examples from Homegrown National Park. And I think this is an opportunity to integrate with the easement even more effectively and give a unique look to this community that will make it really stand out in the area. This just occurred to me tonight based on what I've heard, but it's the kind of thing that has come up in discussions. And we do have a native plant resolution that the township has passed. So I'd like to encourage that thought. I'd also like to add in the few seconds I have left that the trees and shrubs that are placed in those buffers also have a good percentage of native plants because that would integrate again more effectively across the whole project as a preserve, which is what it's being called. So just a thought. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello. Hi.
Right.
My name is Thierry Berthieu. I live on Shore Drive, so directly to the north of this proposed development. I just want to start by saying I'm impressed with the way we've arrived at where we are today in relation to this proposed development through dialogue with all parties and including the local community, of course. And I personally, I hope that this revised residential plan is ultimately approved by the township. I also think the 30 plus acres being purchased by the township was a really nice touch. It's really nice to see our, taxpayer dollars being put to good use. Speaking as a resident living on the north side, I'm also pleased to see that a buffer largely remains to the northwest. My only concern is the way traffic is going to be managed at the intersection of Haywood and Township Line Road and then onto 100 and also Byers Road. So I simply ask that you give that some careful consideration, especially if there's going to be a link up as well with between Haywood and Lionville Station Road. I don't think closing off Lionville Station Road at the bottom is a good idea, but I'm not an expert. I think instead it's probably better to manage the intersection where that house is at the bottom. I'm not sure what would become of this house. And also one suggestion I have as well, someone mentioned earlier about the natatorium being moved. I wonder if anyone has considered putting it adjacent to Tractor Supply on the bottom right. And the way I look at it is the parking, the car park for the natatorium could be adjacent to the car park for Tractor Supply as well, and they could kind of relieve each other, maybe. It's just an idea, yeah. And then obviously some houses would take the place of where the natatorium is now, with the advantage that they would be backing onto some lovely, lovely park space. Yeah, yeah. So that's it. I just want to say, 21 seconds. Thanks for being so diligent and considerate. And it's nice to see, democratic process in action. Thank you.
All right. Thank you for your comment.
It's too tall for me.
There you go.
There we go. Hi, I'm Sue Morgan. I live on Franklin Court in Liongate, which is relatively near to the road. I have a couple concerns about the conservation easement. I think it's problematic to have an HOA be kind of the operator of the easement, managing the easement. HOAs are not very well regulated, and they're not accountable to anybody except their members, their residents there. We're talking about open space for the entire township. And I think there might be a conflict of interest. Second point about the conservation easement is, I hope that when they develop their landscaping plan and their maintenance plan, they take into account to limit the use of pesticides or even eliminate them entirely. Because you're defeating your purpose if you have pesticide sprayed lawns in the middle of meadows and streams and creeks and such. The other concern I have is the affordable housing. Apparently was just abandoned without any comment. What I heard last night was people want open space, they don't want affordable housing. We need both of those things. So I just hope that's taken into consideration. Thank you.
All right, thank you for your comment.
My name is Susan Widener. I live at 75 Jennifer Drive in Chester Springs. I'm totally against this plan. I do appreciate all the hard work you put into it, but I would ask you to recommend not to approve this to the Board of Supervisors. The density is beyond belief. 609 houses, 1,200 people, traffic that I mean, I'm wondering how there's any credibility left for this developer when he says last night, oh, traffic on 113 isn't going to be worse at all from this. How is that even possible when their own traffic studies show over 6,000 vehicular trips a day going out onto 113 and that area up to 100 from this development? Maybe I'm reading it wrong, but that's what I see. A natatorium producing 2,700 trips a day, backed up on 113, where 113 goes down to 401 from 5 lanes. And I talked to you about this in June, where it goes from 5 lanes down to 2 into West Pikeland, when we know in West Bradford, the sports complex has backups of 2 miles. What's going to happen here? We're going to have this backup in front of my street, in front of Lyongate, in front of Fairfields. Is it possible to make it a non-left turn? If you were going to approve this plan, make it a non-left turn onto Route 113 so it doesn't back up down to 401? I mean, we're living traffic, noise, and quality of life issues is what I'm asking you to please consider tonight. As far as the open space, it's disappointing. 38 acres, 25 houses. The whole reason the open space tax referendum movement happened in Uwchlan Township was because of this property. The advocacy came from Save Lionville Station Farm. Now, I don't know if you guys can do anything about this, but I think it's a disappointing number, and I'd like to see this, if you're going to approve this or recommend approval, this density go way down and more open space. Totally against the natatorium. Nobody in our neighborhoods were ever approached by the school district about this. It's just another traffic nightmare scenario. Traffic, traffic, traffic. Thank you.
Thank you. Somebody, anybody, how's that?
I'm Christopher Engel, and I'm on Valley View Drive, just to the north of this plot. We know that the default plan, if this doesn't go forward, is going to be for warehouses. So it's either this or warehouses. No?
That's not the discussion tonight, sir. The discussion is about this plan.
Okay, so I'm reiterating, I like this plan. Okay, and that and I appreciate the fact that I want to start off by saying thank you. After sitting through 3.5 hours last night, I truly appreciate that you do this for us on a regular basis. And I appreciate the work that you put in. I appreciate the township for being willing to work with us and Rockwell. I appreciate Rockwell for doing the work of not taking the easy road and trying to put forth something that we can all appreciate. I'm not in favor of higher density, but I'll take higher density over trucks. And so that was where my comment was going. The fact that over 50% of the land is preserved as open space in one way or another, I think that's a good thing. So I appreciate that. I'm not a fan of the Haywood connection. I'm concerned about the traffic. I'm concerned about Haywood becoming a straight shot to Lionville and the fact that people might be speeding and things like that. I wonder if the plan as it is now, where it isn't a straight shot, but it's kind of a dog leg, over as it looks here, would help alleviate that concern of speeding and driveways and things like that. And I appreciate the fact that they've kept the tree buffer. And so any thought to moving anything into that tree buffer, I would have a concern with. And finally, one of the things that was brought up last night as a possibility was the thought of maybe LYA fields. Personally, I feel that our undertaking for the last 2 years is to preserve as much of the character of this plot of land, and the idea of having the easement, the conservation easement, and having that be meadows would mean that at least on one side of the road, when we're driving on the road, we get to see something that clearly resembles what we are used to, and it preserves the character of what this property was. I understand it's not a perfect solution, but at least it's some of a solution. And so therefore I'm in favor of this plan, however the details get worked out. And so thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Good evening, Steve Van Valen, Valley View Lane, just north here on the map.
Right.
So thank you for your advocacy for us citizens. I really appreciate all the hard work you've put into this. So I want to advocate for a couple of things here related to mostly the landscape. So I work at Longwood Gardens, so I know a few things about that. In the lower quadrant there where the gold carriage houses are, there is a historic black tupelo. It's a Nyssa sylvatica. I'm sure people who've driven by that have noticed it. I think it has a connection clearly to the historic houses that are on the property. I'd like to do everything possible to save it. And Greg and Andrew have been wonderful talking about that and the consideration. But I think what's happened here is the capitulation on the excessive border here for our neighbors in Milky Way has caused the density to move so far to the west that it hasn't made it possible to leave space for that historic tree. So what I would recommend or propose is that we take back the 150 feet and still leaving 150 feet. We have a deer fence, a tree line, and a berm there. That should be plenty enough. I'm a country boy. I grew up with an electric barbed wire fence in the back of my yard. And on the other side of that were the county's best Holstein cows. That 150 feet will do nothing to help any situation with complaints. I think it only makes common sense that anybody moving there would clearly know where they're going to and what's there. And for me, having that farm there, it'd be a bonus. Absolutely a bonus. And I think we're looking at it the opposite way. So if we can get that 150 feet back, it also doesn't push that road or push the housing up against the road, squeezing that, making it feel so dense and tight. It would also allow for parking. If you could just picture where the historic house is, to push that housing back 150 feet, you got plenty of room for parking. So we solve a couple problems by doing that. I would also say, with little amount of time left, for the homeowners association, it is possible to request to be part of the charter that they not use pesticides or broadleaf herbicides. This is headwaters for us. Our well water comes from this property. It's easy to do now with the way turf grass is managed to restrict that. And I think it actually is a selling point along with the native plantings that they recommended. I think that's a fabulous idea. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead.
So, my name is Steve DeLuca. I live at
Into the mic. There you go. Raise it up a little. There you go. Thank you.
Steve DeLuca. I live at 3230 Crystal Lane, Chester Springs, which is actually part of West Vincent Township, just bordering just north. I travel through there probably 3 times a day. And first, I'd like to make a comment about dead-ending Lionville Station Road would be a huge inconvenience. It's probably a 2 to 3 mile detour to get around that. So I'm all in favor of making it a real intersection, and it would be much less dangerous as well. First of all, thank you for your efforts. Really appreciate it. I really commend the way you're working with Rockwell. I love the fact that Rockwell is amenable to all our suggestions. Seems like we found in the 5 years I've been following this, probably the most accommodating and refreshing purchaser for this property. So keeping Lionville Station Farm as is would be great, but unfortunately it's just not realistic, and I think we all know that. So in terms of the things Rockwell has done, increasing open space, doubling the buffer, seems like a good idea, with all due respect to our friend from Longwood. The 10-foot deer fence, eliminating the apartments, reducing the size of the natatorium, hopefully more to come in that area. The mile-long walking trail, field or wetland in the center of the property. The restoration and preservation of the historic buildings, 3, I believe. I'll be done in 55 seconds. And by the way, all this on top of Happy Days Farm, which has not even gone into production at this point, with the first of, I believe, 3 buildings going up there. So, so the warehouses, I think, would be a real nightmare. So, if in my career, there's an old adage that says time kills all deals, and I've experienced that many times. So, without rushing things, we do want to get it right, but I think it's important to get it done, and hopefully we're working towards that. So thank you again. Appreciate all your efforts. Hopefully we'll come to the right conclusion.
All
Take
right.
care.
Thank you for your comment.
Matt Haynes, Harshaw Drive. Thank you very much for your time. Appreciate it. I'm actually from the original Audubon days from the Save Lionville Station Farm. You know, the original fight for the warehouses. I know we're not here talking about that. We're here talking about the residential plan. Thank goodness. It's been quite a lot of sleepless nights and things, you know, between then and now. But I can't say that I approve the residential plan because it's going to change so much, right? There's 50 things at minimum that are going to change. So I can't say that, yes, this is what I prefer. I'm not really supposed to be commenting on warehouses, but what I am up here and saying that I do approve is continuing with Rockwell because they've shown a lot of care and meeting with everyone in the area, listening to all their concerns, doing the best, at least as far as I'm, you know, from what I'm gathering. They actually are trying, and I don't know too many other developers that would go to the lengths that they have, you know, to try to keep everybody happy. And you know, again, they have to make money, and they're in that for that as well. But could it be a little bit less dense? Sure. Could this be moved over here? Maybe. You know, I'd love to see what they will provide next, but I'm confident that, you know, they'll listen to everyone and do everything they can, you know, within their power to make everybody happy. So I'm approving to continue with Rockwell, not the plan. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, thank you guys. Greg Weiss. I live at 467 Lionville Station Road, which is at the very top northeast portion where we haven't heard many comments from people that live in that direction. Um, if I had the pointer, I would show you up on the screen some of the things that I was saying, but I'm not allowed to use the audio visual for my comments. Thank you to the township. They've done a great job in securing the easement and giving an explanation on some of the open space. I do share, as some of the comments were made from some of the other members, I think it's a good start, but I think it's short. I think there's more preservation that needs to be done. And I think that there's the northern end of this property, there isn't sufficient buffer on the top northeastern side. The northwestern side, with the acquisition of the Eli's property, they've secured a lot of wooded area, and it looks nice there, and I think that's secure. But I think there's a few more things that need to be added. One of the comments that was made by the township, by the folks from the Conservation Easement Commission, the Pickering and French Creek Trust, at the last meeting was that we had done a very good job at a north-south contiguous open space in this plan, but we've done very little on an east-west contiguous open space. And if you see that most of the wildlife and a lot of the things that happen on this property, all the wildlife comes in from that north side, and it also comes from the Milky Way farm, and on that northeastern quadrant, that's a corridor. That's a wildlife corridor right there, and we're building all the way up to 150 feet on that north side. So if there's more room to continue to expand that easement and open space, we have to figure out a way to lessen that density in that top right portion and increase that. And I think if we can do that, I think there's options for that, and there's a way to do that. And I think the school district has been left out of these conversations, honestly. I haven't seen anyone from the school district step forward and say, hey, as taxpayers, we've agreed to tax increases. We've thrown our money in. Rockwell's agreed to talk through and make changes to separate some of their money and make updates. The township has agreed to come to the table and talk about what they can do. Yet the school district has said nothing about the fact that they're tripling their investment that they made in this property, but they haven't come forward to say, hey, we can take a haircut of 10%. That would allow us to reduce the density and maybe get closer to where we're going. But the school district has not stepped up or said anything, at least that I'm aware of. So I think they need to operate in good faith and come to the table as well. Just some thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Karen Empey. I live at 487 Lionville Station Road, direct neighbor to Greg, who just spoke. I don't want to talk about traffic too much because at this point it's like beating a dead horse, but I know several members had said they hadn't really driven that road. I'm going to tell you that almost every time I come out of my driveway, I say several Hail Marys and, and gun it. And if anybody has a question about the current traffic situation, I encourage them to come stand on the shoulder during rush hour and see how long they're still alive at the end, because we don't walk that road. The speeding is ridiculous. It's not a safe road. I used to be so worried about my kids when the bus would stop that somebody was going to, slam into them and rear end them. So if you have a question about the traffic, come spend a little time out there during rush hour and it should clear right up for you. I also agree with up in the top right-hand side, the north, whatever we are, that a lot of attention has been given to Milky Way and their fence and their extra large buffer. We also have farm animals, certainly not to the degree that Milky Way does, but I have 2 horse pastures that back right up to that property with horses in it. We do see, like Greg said, there's a lot of wildlife back and forth through there, and So what's their option going to be? To come down the middle of Lionville Station? We already have a deer problem. So I would like to see more attention maybe to pulling that density down further and giving us a buffer. And also just the wooded, there's a lot of really great wooded areas up there with old hardwood. And I'd like to see on the plan how much of that woods they're taking out, how much of the woods is remaining. You know, those are woods you'll never be able to get back again. I mean, the trees are huge. And I think even if you could incorporate some walking trails through some of those wooded sections, it would, you know, be very nice. But that's pretty much it. A little too much density, a little not enough buffer, and traffic, traffic, traffic.
Thank you. Floor is open.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Tim Ferris. I am the managing partner for Extracting Box. Just to clear up, I will not take over the building if it's a lease. I do not want to have 1,200 people telling me how to operate a honeybee business operation from that site. We do have bee facilities through universities, which go through the due process. We also have at Hershey Mill at that unit. They have homeowners associations and groups, and then an umbrella homeowners association above that. There's like 7 different committees that you're reporting to with movements of what you're doing. The building is pretty much derelict. So to lease a building after putting $200,000 to $300,000 worth of repairs and infrastructure into it, that's a bad deal. Owning the site and doing the improvements, you get the return on your investment. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Floor is open again. Give it a couple minutes. Anything on what? I have a taker.
My name is Melba Matthews. I live at 521 East Uwchlan Avenue, known as 113, also known as Milky Way Farm. I would like to know if there will be a grading study be made on the property and if it's going to be completed, if so, when it would be made available to the public. As a grandparent of grandchildren who attend Pickering Valley Elementary, and most of the houses along 113, the children do attend Pickering Valley Elementary. We travel both ways to Lionville Station Road and feel there's more traffic than the Traffic Study Commission report showed on that road, having traveled it sometimes twice a day, sometimes 3 times a day if they forget an instrument. Perhaps there should be a traffic study done where there's tapes put across the road on Lionville Station to actually see what the actual traffic count is on Lionville Station Road now, to know what 1,218 cars are going to add to that. Has there been any thought to the traffic on 113 turning left into this new development, and it will back up on the bridge over the turnpike because there's just a short distance there for a left-hand turn. And if you're going to be having all the traffic coming home or traveling during the day and making a turn, the backup on 113 at that traffic light at Lionville Station will be greater than I think what is anticipated. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks.
Hi, I'm Jane Ferris. I'm a resident of Buckley Court. And
Believe it or not, I'm a 45-year resident of Uwchlan Township, and I've been driving down Lionville Station since I learned to drive. And now I drive it as a mom, driving through the area. And I can tell you and reiterate the comment about the traffic on 113 going down the hill, sitting for 10, sometimes 15 minutes to get to 401, depending if it's between the hours of 3 and 4:30. And so that cut through to the question that you asked is very important to be able to go down Lionville Station Road when everything's backed up. And I also wanted to comment last night, there was a comment about the bridge over the turnpike. And I think while we're all very aware that that is not at all realistic, if we were in a dreaming state, that would be a great option with the natatorium to help guide that traffic away from the more residential traffic in the area.
Thank you. Do I have anybody else that would like to come forward? Okay, with that, we will close the public comment part of our meeting. At this time, is there anything you need to address? Township manager?
No, I think there was a lot of good comment, a lot of good comments, both from the public and the planning commission, feedback provided to Rockwell. I think they're appreciative of that feedback. And, you know, in terms of next steps, I think they'll do some of the additional studies that were asked for. They'll update the plan, make some plan refinements. We're going to talk to them about timing, figure out where kind of everything falls into the process and a schedule, and stay tuned.
Sounds good. Thank you for your comments. Do I need to read the announcements? Adjourn? Don't need, okay. Well, with that, we will adjourn tonight's meeting. Thank you, everyone, for coming out.
I'll motion to adjourn the meeting. I'll second.
All right.
All in favor?